it used to be a minority of people who thought the moon landings were fake. And now with that generation died away whose hearts melted when they saw it on TV, now people never saw that, never had that emotional imprinting, look at it objectively, and they objectively say, they didn't go. And so, I think because the tide is turning, they're kind of come up, with these kind of misinformation, or maybe it's their way, I think it's pretty, telling the truth. I think it's pretty positive. You got this film, it looks really good. I'm a pretty good judge of previews, and it looks like a really sharp film coming out called Moonwalkers about them asking Kubrick to fix the moon mission, which indeed they more than likely did. And it's so funny. I think maybe the truth is coming out, and even if it's a hoax about a hoax, it's still a hoax, and it still shows how you can mislead people. The fake Kubrick interview proves how you can mislead people with a television image. I played poker with a guy, and he did something I think they called a double bluff or the triple bluff. He made me know that he was bluffing, and I knew that that's what he wanted me to know. Therefore, I thought that, but he thought one past me.
Yeah.
And but according to Shakespeare, and Jesus, the truth will come out.
Is the spacesuits, and I mean this for real, in that the radical shifts in temperature from being in a shadow to versus being in direct sunlight out in the vacuum of space, and what that would do to your body. I can't see that air conditioner or heater that's hanging on your back, battery powered, keeping up with that, and also the radiation that suit should be blocking. Forget it. We're going to talk about the capsule itself in just a bit. But that's one of the things right there that makes me go, what do you think about that and the spacesuit? If the spacesuit was supposed to do what it was supposed to do, is it possible that it could keep up with those 200-degree shifts in temperature that would happen in seconds?
Well, von Braun, who was a former Nazi who was in charge of the Apollo program, wrote a book called Conquest of the Moon. I think you can buy an antique copy of it for about $85. We have a copy of it. And then it says a couple of interesting things. First of all, he says it's impossible to go to the moon in a single rocket. He said you have to have 3 rockets, each one taller than the Empire State Building, each one weighing 10 times the amount of the Queen Mary ship. Of course, they went in one rocket, 1/30th of that. He basically recanted on his math by about a factor of 45,000% to say they could go to the moon. And then secondly, he said that when you land on the moon, and you'll see this if you can go to Conspiracy Corner at Sabrell.com, click on the Russia story, you'll see an artist depiction of them on the moon, and they basically build an igloo in the dirt. Because von Braun said these little particles of sand that hit the Earth all the time and burn up in the atmosphere don't burn up on the moon. Sometimes they're traveling at, 3,000 miles an hour, up to 20,000 miles an hour. And they would go through your skull, the spacesuit, the spacecraft, and cause a catastrophic failure. He said every 24 hours there'd be a 50% chance of a catastrophic failure. And so you'd have to go into a cave, and that's depicted in this drawing. Additionally, they got the Earth really big there, in the background, which is how it would look. But there's not a single Apollo picture with the huge Earth in the background on the surface of the moon. Not a single one. And I think that would be the picture you'd want to do. You see, they couldn't fake, the position of the continents relative to the point of view and the clouds going by and it rotating. It was too difficult, so they just didn't show it. And they did the same thing with the TV picture. I mean, in 1967, I Dream of Jeannie went from black and white to color. And in 1967, Bewitched went from black and white to color. And in 1967, Gilligan's Island went from black and white to color. Now, I think if Gilligan's Island is worthy of color, surely putting a man on the moon, the greatest technical accomplishment of all time, you'd have a high-resolution color camera. But they deliberately didn't use it. And they basically what aired was fourth generation, a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a TV image, very snowy. It really could have been shot in someone's backyard with a spotlight at night. And everyone, wept and, cheered, and it kind of burned that impression in. And even when much clearer pictures came out that proved photographic fraud, they refused to see it because it already burned in their minds that they went. It's really hard for them to accept anything else. Kind of like if I say, hey, Jimmy, let me take you out to this great restaurant, and this cockroach crawls across the table, no matter how good the steak is. What do you remember of cockroach? What do you remember 30 years from now? Cockroach. And when people have that burned in, we went to the moon and they're crying and cheering, it's really hard to undo that. Really hard. You have to be truly open-minded and willing to accept failure and admit failure in order to accept us.
Have you been to the Smithsonian's Air and Space Museum in D.C.?
I have.
Okay, I'm glad. I've been there a couple of times, maybe a few times. And one of the things, and I talked to Jay Widener about this the other night, is when you go and see those space capsules and you go up and you look inside of Apollo, honestly, I swear, I'm not saying it's because of your film or documentary or what I know. I'm saying when you see it firsthand, the first thing that pops into your mind is no way. No way, no how did that, no, stop. It just doesn't, it looks like, I was telling Jay, it reminded me of like a 1965 Volkswagen Beetle, that kind of technology. When you look at it, things just don't add up. It just doesn't.
No, 1965 Volkswagen Beetles are good cars. I would say this was more like a really nice doghouse.
And you understand what I'm trying to say here, right?
Yeah, I mean the design that you could poke your finger through the titanium foil or whatever it was, and the idea that they could power against 250 degrees heat and get it down to 72 degrees on a bank of car batteries running air conditioned for 3 days. And they say, the specifications electronically, the schematics electrically, they are not classified. They're just not available because they accidentally got destroyed. Even the Saturn V specifications got destroyed. You can't even prove, unless you got old copies of, that the fuel was not sufficient for escape velocity. It was only sufficient for going into Earth orbit. You could figure that out. You know what I mean? And then, poor Ron Howard wanted to make this, IMAX film, and you watch it, he wants to commemorate how great the moon landings are, and 90% of it are reenactments. And sometimes, even though it's, 70 millimeter IMAX, you see this tiny square of about 10% of the screen in the middle, and you can see a VHS tracking line because the only way he could find the footage was from renting it from Blockbuster, just like I did. Because he asked NASA to transfer this stuff first generation to, IMAX, and that's when the tapes accidentally disappeared. Now, they have the Constitution and the, Declaration of Independence, 250 almost years old, but they don't have something that's like, 48 years old. They misplaced it. And, because he was about to transfer these, not too brilliant sets, because they were shooting fourth generation black and white. He was going to transfer it at super high resolution and project it the size of a football field or half that size on a screen. And you would really see, if it were fake or real, you'd see it pretty clearly. And they weren't going to allow that to happen. That's when they accidentally misplaced. I'm estimating at least 1,000 pounds of tapes. I put 1,000 pounds somewhere the other day, and I just can't figure out where I put it.
Yeah. It's just missing, right? Well, have you ever thought about? And this is how my brain works. But go with me on this for a second, Bart. The most extraordinary event in human history, right? We walked on the moon. It's the most extraordinary event ever. Why aren't there literally hundreds of blockbuster full feature movies based on this and documenting and covering? The only one that I can think of is Apollo 13, and that's the one that was messed up. Why doesn't Hollywood care about this important historical event, and why don't they make movies about it? Is it because we would see that it was faked, right? If we shot a bunch of spectacular moon footage of, guys on the moon, that we would be able to go back and say, is that wrong for me to think like that? Why aren't there more Hollywood movies based on the Apollo missions?
Well, to tell you the truth, Jimmy, and all my work on this for 20 years, I've never even thought about that. That's a really good point. if they made, the Ten Commandments movie or, Saving Private Ryan, all these World War II movies and things like that, why hasn't there ever been a drama about them going to the moon? There's not been a single movie about it. It's like they won't touch it. Now, there was a film, I think it came out in 1978, called Capricorn 1.
Right.
It's actually a very well-made movie, and it's about a fake, quote, Mars landing. And in the, VHS sleeve, it boasts on the back the only space film ever shot with NASA's full cooperation. So they never agreed to help out with any space film. Even 2001: Space Odyssey, they officially did not help out with it. But when a film comes out about a fake mission, then they're fully cooperate. I think they had to, otherwise they would say, it really was fake. So they had to turn the tables on them, use reverse psychology, and say, come on in and make a film about it. If it were possible to go to the moon in the 60s on the first attempt with 50 years older technology, there would be bases on the moon now, right now as we speak, but they're not. And the fact that they're not is proof itself that it cannot be done. Because if it can't be done today, how could it possibly be done 50 years ago?
And one of the other things I want to address, I want your opinion here, the micrometeorite idea and the thickness of what the capsules were made out of and the command module, it doesn't sit right with me. There's nothing to deflect and there's no way to repair it. And how could they possibly dodge everything that was coming at them? Surely, if you went to the moon, there would be stories about them having to repair holes in the capsule and we were hit by this and we lost pressure. There would be those stories, and they are just, quite frankly, not there. And I just have a hard time buying into that now. Knowing what I know today, it seems like they would have been riddled with stuff and they had to make repairs.
Well, people don't realize that when Apollo 12, the second mission to the moon, in December of 69, 6 months later, people were phoning in the networks complaining that reruns of I Love Lucy were being interrupted. And then about a minute and a half into it, their color camera, the astronaut accidentally, in quotes, pointed at the sun, ruining all the television images for the entire mission. So they saw these images in 69 July, but they didn't see them the second time. The third time, they allegedly, had this failure where they had to, save the crew. They never left Earth orbit either. It's just you get people dramatically interested back in the program. Then by Apollo 14, it was 2 years after Apollo 11. They had 2 years of Kubrick or whatever to pass on and artistry to, and then to get their act together. But the thing is, people have already accepted it, that it's real. So it's actually easier to fool them in the later missions because you've already won them over. You're preaching to the choir. You know what I mean? And they took advantage of that. And,
Well, a meteorite, that there was a slip of the tongue, the meteorite. If it's traveling at, I'm pulling numbers out of the air, 17, 20,000 miles an hour, wouldn't it just like go in one side of the capsule and out the other, or maybe even take out a couple of astronauts in the meantime?
Well, any particle, even the size of a grain of sand, yes, it would go in and out, and it would cause an air leak, which would cause decompression, either of the spacecraft or the spacesuit. And to my knowledge, they had no repair equipment for that eventuality. It wasn't even discussed. I don't see how you could repair it. I mean, maybe if you're in your spacesuits, maybe you possibly could repair the lunar module in your spacesuits and pump the air back in, possibly, maybe. But the fact that von Braun said, you had to go into a cave and they never did, and they had so many missions and hours on the moon that he said it was a 1 in 4 chance, that they were so many times on the moon, 1 in 4 chance. And it was, it's a 50% chance every 24 hours. So eventually you're gonna have a catastrophic failure. And to say they went all these times, 6 times, and never had it, that's against the odds that the genius said. So what can you do?
Exactly. And with when you're traveling that 250,000 miles or whatever, 237,000 miles out to the moon, you have one side of the command module heating up to it's just stupid temperatures. And then the way that this is their explanation, they would, rotate the craft to the cool side and allow it to heat up and allow the hot side to cool down, and that's how they got there. Again, is that just too much for us to grasp?
No, it's a great theory, just like vaccines are theoretical. But that doesn't mean vaccines work, and that doesn't mean that actually worked. I mean, there are only 3 people there, and 5 billion of us to convince, and only 3 people there. If they said it worked, how can we disprove it? You know what I mean? There's no independent press coverage. World War II and all those terrible events happened, in front of everybody. But this event, there's no independent press coverage. A TV picture completely controlled by the federal government and the Nixon administration. If they say it's on the moon, then it must be on the moon. I mean, we had no reason to doubt them. And, but, without all this time going by, you can, the longer it goes on, the more absurd you can see the notion it really is.
Now, what about the one thing that everybody keeps bringing up, NASA too, not just you and I and other, the Van Allen radiation belt? How, if we were to pass through it, what would the results of that be? Would we come back to Earth and just die of cancer, quickly? What kind of exposure are we looking at, and how could we actually technically avoid it, knowing what we know today? It would be obviously protection on the capsule itself, but also passing through it very quickly too as well. What would the real effects be of that radiation?
Well, if your listeners go to Sabrell.com, the Conspiracy Corner, go down to the Orion article. It references the actual charts that von Braun was given by Dr. James Van Allen. And he said it would be at least 5 rem per hour to 100 rem per hour. 1 rem per hour would kill you. So it's at least 5, to 20 times more dangerous than previously believed. In fact, in 1994, when the space shuttle went to its highest altitude, they, to their surprise, were seeing the radiation with their eyes closed at nighttime when they slept. They'd see little fireworks from the radiation going through the spacecraft and through the retinas of their closed eyes. And they reported the following, word for word: the radiation belt surrounding Earth is more dangerous than previously believed. Well, previously believed can only be the Apollo missions. So it's more dangerous than believed during the Apollo missions. So wait a minute, they're like 650 miles away from the beginning of it. Imagine radiation so severe you could see it with your eyes closed from 650 miles away. And then wait a minute, if it's more dangerous than previously believed, then how could a crew 650 miles from it know more about it than the people in the middle of it? The only way is if they never were in the middle of it, you see. So there's an admission right there. People would just, connect the dots.
I'm reading it here. I didn't know it was 25,000 miles thick. So
yeah, now basically I contacted NASA and I asked to speak to this guy in the video who said they have yet to develop the technology to go through the radiation. They would not let him speak to me. And I wrote them these questions, and any question that was kind of, innocuous, they answered. But when I asked any difficult question, they just acted like I never asked the question. And then I asked, well, you had 2 Geiger counters on board. Could I please have the Geiger counter readings of the radiation belt in REM? And they said it's a classified secret. But I said, wait a minute. If you sent a probe with taxpayer funds to the sun to find out the temperature, you tell us and you tell science. And if you send a probe to Jupiter to find out how much hydrogen is in Jupiter's atmosphere, you just tell us the reading. So this is just a part of nature, how much radiation is in the radiation belt. So why would a part of nature be classified? Unless, of course, it would prove that the radiation is so severe that the Apollo astronauts could never have, gone through it. And that's what the data shows.
Did any of the astronauts get sick?
No, not a single one ever. And none of them have ever died of cancer, to my knowledge, either. If you're a pilot or a steward, or stewardess, you go up and you got a radiation detector on the belt, just like people who work with X-rays.
Right.
Because and you're just going 5 miles up, 5 miles into the radiation. Can you imagine being almost 300 miles into it? How much radiation there'd be, or going through it? You know what I mean? I don't know what to say. It just, and that's admitted in this video. The technology to survive going through the belts does not yet exist. And when I asked to speak to the guy who said it, they wouldn't let me. When I asked for the Geiger counter readings, what they were, they wouldn't show it to me. They said I had to file a Freedom of Information Act to get it.
As far as I know, everybody did kind of grow up to be ripe old men.
No, one had a motorcycle accident, one had a heart attack, another guy was in his 80s, you know what I mean?
Right.
Open heart surgery, so forth. So they're all reasonable, but none cancer, none radiation. They never got sick, never vomited, nothing.
Nobody lost their hair.
Right. No, that's true.
Now, in Astronauts Gone Wild, which is... It's difficult to watch at best, right? It's a tough film to get through. It's uncomfortable, but I think it's
difficult for me to watch it too.
Yeah, I can only imagine, man. And thank you for talking about it, because it's got to be uncomfortable. But it was also a film that needed to be made. Somebody had to do it. You were the guy that did it. First question, and then and let's discuss that. Are you proud of it, or maybe do you wish you maybe approached it a different way today?
No, I am not proud of it. If I had the opportunity to make it again today, I would not do it. I told the astronauts that I was doing a documentary about the moon missions, which was true. I am doing a documentary about the moon missions. I never told them that I thought it was fake. They assumed that I was one like many other journalists who were, there to listen to their propaganda. So I challenged them instead. They got angry and so forth. One guy kicked me, one guy punched me. And, it is, I suppose, good for the record to show, what they did. What's really interesting to me is that the CIA or whoever never warned them. Surely, if they didn't go to the moon, which is true, and I'm, looking into it, surely, if they're doing their job, my phone calls are monitored. So they knew we were setting up these astronaut interviews and going to spring, a new point of view on them, and they didn't warn them, and I guess because it's true, very honorable, patriotic people are in the government at the CIA, NSA, and so forth. And I think it makes this new generation of those type of people in the government and these intelligent, offices upset that the Nixon administration did this and besmirched the reputation of America. And so they don't like them. They don't like what they did. And so they deliberately chose not to warn them and let them flounder on their own. And you can see that in Astronauts Gone Wild.
Out of all of the astronauts, and we could actually take each one separately and discuss it, because each one is unique in its own event, if you will. Out of each one of them, was there one interview that you came away with just going, okay, now he is lying? Which would be the best example?
Well, we have Buzz Aldrin telling the truth in his interview, where we had 2 cameras and a monitor set up, and we showed him the footage that he was the cinematographer. He took himself to be a photographer. So he's the one who shot this fake scene that we uncovered. And he saw it, and he said angrily, "Oh, and this makes you a real famous person for having discovered this. What an ego you must have to want to become successful this way." Well, wait a minute. This makes me a real famous person for having discovered this. That's an admission that I'm on the right track, because how can I become famous for exposing it if it's not true? So he actually admitted on camera by that statement that I'm correct, the moon missions are fake. And when he realized that, he backpedaled, and then he threatened to sue us if we showed his remarks acknowledging the fraud to anyone. And, we put it in there and Astronauts Gone Wild. You can see, maybe I did, 2 wrongs don't make a right, tricking them into this trap, At the time, I thought, well, they deserve it if they're guilty, just like O.J. Simpson, if he's guilty, deserves being hounded, if he's out scot-free, if he did it. But, now looking back on it, I think even if they are guilty, which they are, they deserve respect. and they deserve to be talked to respectfully, and I did not do that, and I would not do it again, knowing what I know now. If anything happened on the way to the moon, there's enough proof that they didn't go. This is there. It is what it is. But again, if I had to make it over again, I would not have done it.
One of the moments in the film, and it's something that for me has not been addressed directly. You did bring it up, but once you know what you're looking at, and I'm talking about the first Apollo 11 press conference when they come out on stage, and at that moment, Bart, and I'm glad that you caused us to look at their faces and their emotions. When they come out, it looks to me, and I've watched it so many times, that quite frankly, they don't want to be there.
Well, being a filmmaker, what convinces me is the newly discovered footage of them taking a shot over and over again right in front of your eyes. However, about 1 out of 5 people, or 20%, say what convinced them is their expressions during the press conference, of which I only showed about 20 seconds or so. I mean, they look like they're at a funeral. They look like their mother just died, and they don't want to talk to keep passing the buck, and they just look so discouraged. It's mind-boggling. It in no way whatsoever fits with conquering heroes. They landed on the moon. They did it. They survived. Isn't life grand? We didn't die. It looks the exact opposite. It looks exactly like they lied about it, and they are lying, and they hate the fact that they are lying. You can see it in their expressions on their faces. I think crystal clear.
And there was an exchange between Neil and who is the command module guy?
Mr. Collins.
Yes, Colin. When they don't have their story straight, and they both look at each other on who was gonna correct this, and it was about the stars, right? And tell me about that moment and how that hit you.
Well, they took an automobile to the moon, but they never took a telescope. And I think a telescope would be more important. Plus, are you really going to drive away from, more than walking distance from your life support system, and this car might break down and you don't have enough oxygen, water, or energy to walk back? I don't think you're going to do that. I think that's an unnecessary risk. So, each, Moon rover in today's money costs $60 million. It had about, probably 20% of the parts of GPAS, very few parts to it. Again, it cost $60 million. And, I think, even little things like the slow motion footage, when you see them bouncing around on the moon, to me, that's proof. I mean, you double the speed, and it's so clearly slow motion. They didn't take a telescope. They could have just shot a picture of the stars with no atmosphere. It'd be like the Hubble, 30 years beforehand. But they never took a telescope because they couldn't fake the astrological positions of the constellations. And theoretically, deeper galaxies yet to be discovered that later, if they make a bigger telescope on Earth, would prove that they weren't there. They never photographed it. They never talked about it. But you can't help. One of the reporters asked during the press conference of Armstrong, did you remember seeing stars? And he says, I don't remember. I don't recall. And it's like, oh, wow, okay. If you're on the moon and you're going through this, amazing experience, and you look over the black horizon, either you're going to see stars or you're not. And if you, didn't, I'm sure you would have expected to. You would have talked about it. And if you did, it'd be, this, beautiful. They have pictures from Earth just during, sunset of the launch of the space shuttle, and you see the sun, the field, and stars in the sky. So surely, you know what I mean? You could see stars in the sky, but he said he doesn't remember. And when he says that, Buzz Aldrin flinches, and Michael Collins, who was supposed to be orbiting the moon while they two walked, says, I don't remember seeing any. Wait a minute, except he wasn't there. But because they were all together for 8 days in the same capsule, he had the same experience, and he kind of forgot. I don't remember seeing any. He's trying to help him from the debriefing. He's supposed to say, I don't remember, I didn't see any. And he's like, I don't remember, I'm covering for you. But wait a minute, he wasn't there. So when you get the written transcript from NASA, it's different than the press conference, which is also from NASA. And the video footage, which very few people have access to, it is Collins who says they don't remember seeing any. But the transcript, which is what almost everyone gets, it says Buzz Aldrin said it. So lightning struck twice in the same spot. First, Michael Collins said he was there when he wasn't, And then the person doing the transcription makes a mistake in that exact same spot where Collins makes a mistake. And they say Buzz Aldrin said, I don't remember saying that. That's two coincidences back to back at the same moment in time. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I don't want to drive this home, like make too much of this, but we kind of have to. Because if it was me or you, Bart, and we just got back from the moon, we walk in that press conference with our arms in the air, music, fanfare, dude, we just did. You know what I mean? And when somebody asks you about the stars or the where's the enthusiasm? Well, you know what? I was looking for stars, man. I didn't see them. I tried. I wanted to see what it would look like on the moon. Where's that answer?
Not only is the 20 seconds the prime scene of that in A Funny Thing Happened, if you go further down on the YouTube channel under moon landing films, there's the entire press conference unedited. I synchronized it from 2 camera angles, color corrected it, and you can see the whole press conference where they're just acting like they're at a funeral for over an hour.
Yeah,
it's sad. It's so telling. I'm surprised no one picked up on it.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. That's what I'm talking about. Could you imagine going into this, Super Bowl locker room? You've just won the Super Bowl. Yeah, man. Okay, man. You know what I mean? That's not what you would do. And that natural human reaction to coming back after something like that is what we wanted to see. And that press conference was absolutely the exact opposite.
I think that should tell you something.